I was thinking of something helpful to help you guys study the different cubes, cones, and things like that. And so I thought a neat tool would be to just use Maya to block out your scenes and then use it just sort of as a study as you're drawing, right? So let's talk a little bit about the basics of Maya, because some of you have no experience in 3D and you're still just learning Photoshop. So you can download Maya for free. I'm going to pause the video and bring up the link. So if you go to students.autodesk.com or you go to autodesk.com education and you click on free software and you register as a student using your, I actually have a Gmail and they still let me do it, but I put down my college that I teach at and stuff like that. Then you can download Maya. It's a little bit of time, but it's an unbelievably useful tool, especially if you're looking to do anything in game development, design or any technical art. You can kind of mock up your own little 3D things to help you. Let's take a look at Maya once it's installed. Ordinarily, when you hit spacebar, you get your 4 views here. This is when you first open Maya, you get something that looks like this. What we're going to focus in is the perspective view. So I'm going to hit spacebar above perspective, and we're going to just create some shapes and some lights. Let's start off with our basic one, which is our cube. So I'm going to go to create Polygon primitive plane, and this is going to be the ground that our cube sits on. In order to focus on this, you can hit F. Now on my mouse rather, there's a wheel. I can zoom out. What I'm going to do is just hit R, and you'll notice that it compresses this button here. That's our scale tool. And as I highlight my mouse over it, you can actually see in the corner here that it gives you the hotkey for it. Now I'm going to click on this center cube and maximize that, like that. The next thing I'm going to do is go back up to create and do Polygon primitive and make a cube. And this option, 2 options above it, is our move tool. Now I want to rotate so I can see this from a side view and move this up. So I'm going to hold Alt and left click. And by holding Alt and left clicking and not releasing the left mouse button, I can rotate around. Then I'm going to scroll my wheel in to zoom in, and I'm just going to move it up. Conversely, if you hit spacebar, you can see that we get a bunch of different views. Our top view, our front, and our side. If it's easier for you, you can select your cube in here, hit R, scale it up, then hit W and move it above the plane, like this. I'm going to hit spacebar again, zoom out a little bit. Now, in order to utilize the lighting in the scene, I'm just going to hit 7. You can see here I actually have no lights in the scene. It's completely black. So I'm going to go up to the top and I'm going to hit create lights, point light, and it's going to create it in the center of my world. I'm going to move it out a little bit. Now you can see with a point light, it sort of functions like a light bulb, right? This is what we were sort of drawing with, right? So I'm just rotating around my scene, moving the light. Now if I want to pan my scene, I hold Alt and click that middle wheel in. So this is the Alt in the middle wheel, and I zoom in. Now notice I don't have any shadows in my scene, and we're also receiving lighting excuse me for that. We're only receiving lighting from one light source. So what we can do is we can go to shadows here, turn on use depth map shadows. Now you might be wondering, well, why don't we see any shadows in our scene? Well, up at the top here, there's a lighting view. I'm going to go down to shadows and turn that on. Now, what we can do is just by studying this, I'm going to go to show and turn off grid. Sorry about the interrupted thought. We could say, alright, we have our perspective lines, right, that are coming off in this direction, right? And then we have another perspective point. So say we're looking at it our default view. It's kind of like this. We can see sort of where our horizon line is. Frame that up a little bit. This. I'm going to deselect that. And I'll do a quick sketch over this so you can see it. So I'm going to hit Windows S, and I'm going to grab my snipping tool. So just by typing in snipping, and it's this guy right here, and I'm going to hit New, and I'm going to grab this and drop this into the scene. Alright, so I got that. Now by default, because I highlighted it using my snipping tool, it automatically copied it to the clipboard. So I'm going to jump over to Photoshop here. I'm going to hit Control N and then just hit Enter. And then I'm going to hit Control V and I'm going to paste that in there. Now let's sketch around this to see where we can find out where, in contrast to our image here, where our horizon line is and how the painting works. So I'm going to throw a line just sort of going off in the directions like this, right? So one going off like this, the one going off like this, right? And we're sort of going off scene because these lines convert all the way out here, right? So something like right? And if we were to extend this all the way, we go way off scene with our lines, right? And then we would block this out. We're all familiar sort of with this process by now, right? And honestly, if you think about this, there's really only 3 values here because we're working off one color. We have this value here, right? We have this value here, which is just slightly darker than our background. And we have this almost pure black, right? Actually, on here it registers as pure black. Do you see that? And that spins out. We have no bounce lighting, right? You're not getting any bounce lighting from our shadows, but if the surface is bright enough, you can. Okay, so this is kind of a neat tool for you to sort of experiment with. If you jump back into Maya, so here we are back in Maya, and we duplicate this light, we move it off to the side here, we turn off our shadows. Up at the top here under intensity, you can bring that down a little bit, and you can see how we get a little bit of lighting that travels into our cylinder, or I'm sorry, our cube rather, right? So this is sort of a nifty tool. And now another light that we can use, right, that we haven't been doing a lot of drawing with in class is really a spotlight. So here's our spotlight. We'll bring this off to the side, and this is going to take some getting used to, right? And let's hit spacebar here so you can see it. This is kind of a nice way of sort of viewing your model, or sort of how you can set up your model, right? So here's our top view. So let's say we want to go almost completely behind the model like this. I'm going to hit E again, sorry, and I'm rotating it. Notice, kind of like a camera director here, or lighting director rather. Here's kind of an interesting way to look at our model. And in life, we have kind of like we get lighting from a lot of different sources. So if we go to create light again and we grab our ambient light, right? Notice that this ambient light sort of functions as our sun. So I can dial this intensity down. You can see it almost flattens out all of the shadows in our scene. We can also turn on this option here, which is ambient occlusion, and that adds shadow information. That's the darkest shadows whenever 2 objects meet. So what I would suggest is, for your homework, which is to draw a bunch of these cubes and spheres and cylinders, do some very basic lighting in Maya, the setup, and then just rotate around it. Here's an easy way of doing it. Hit F to focus, zoom out, and then just hold Alt, and rotate around and do these value studies. And then once you have it, something like this, jump back into Photoshop. Let's hide these lines. And maybe just marquee the section that you want. That's just, I hit the M tool, hit copy, and then inside of Photoshop, paste it up in the corner or to the side. And just do some thumbnails before you do the finished ones, right? Sorry, let's do this one more time. Something like this. And then once you have the small one, throw another layer on top. And what we can do is just grab my black brush, start to emulate this route like this. Now something else I noticed, I want to just kind of touch on this briefly, and I'll review this in another video, but when I go to Window Brush Settings, notice what happens. Many of you were having trouble when we were going over this in class. You were like, why am I not getting any painting? Sometimes even when you click these on, they don't turn on shape dynamics, which is your pen pressure. And it doesn't turn on transfer, which should also be on pen pressure. And what's really good is smoothing, right? To have smoothing on. And just so that you can sort of, I usually leave it at 0, but it's sometimes good to revert. Now notice that line that we just created. And with all of those options on, notice the difference in line. It's picking up my contrast in thick and thin. See that? So make sure that those are there. And if you're also not getting any pen pressure, make sure that your tablet has all this stuff on it. All right, so I'm gonna end this one here in this video here, and just so you can kind of, and then what we'll do is like, I'll try to sometime next week upload another subsequent video for you to just on sort of how to generate these shadows and stuff like that. Okay, a little bit more on bounce lighting, how to really paint in values, and cast shadows and building up of shadow values.